Shamai, let's see if we can get those bass blue lines up another level. So this is actually part 3. I've done a series of very short basic lessons talking about the 12 bars blues with our basses. I started off explaining what the 12 bar blues is, the chord progression and how to play it just playing root and in fact even open strings. I've explained about how patterns can work to help you, especially if you need to change keys with it. And what I'm going to show you today is really how to make your blues bass line stand out, because these are the little bits the pros put in to make it sound really bluesy. So yeah, the 12 bar blues is a very basic chord progression, and because of the nature, the way it works is you end up having to play the same chord over and over again. And this is where little things like turnarounds at the end of your 12 bar blues and walk ups or climb ups or leading notes can really make your bass line stand out from the rest and even help the other players. So just by the nature of the 12 bar blues, you get some chord repeated, okay? Remember now, if we're working in numbers, we're talking about chords 1, 4 and 5. If we're talking about letters, I'm looking at it in the key of A. So our chord 1 is our A7, our chord 4 is our D7, and our chord 5 is our E7. Okay, now then, if we're in the key of A, that means we're starting on A, and ideally you're finishing on A. But if, let's just say you're playing the blues and you've got different verses and choruses, and they're all going to finish on that first chord, all right, it becomes a little bit silly when you're going back. So I'm just going to show you a few little tricks that we can do to make it more interesting. All right, the first one I'm going to show you is actually at the end of the 12 bar progression, okay? Because we're in the key of A, it actually finishes on an A and it sounds a little bit, let me just play it. Back to A, E next, A. And then we go back to the beginning of it again. So we end up with a lot of A bars in there. What I've done with this one, and I've actually written it in on the notation and tab, okay, is what we call a turnaround. Now then, I'm using E as our turnaround note because it is our 5th note of the scale, so it's the obvious choice, all right? And I'm going to do it quickly. A, onto D, back to A, E, D, A, then I'm going to do A, but I want that second half of that bar to be my E chord. I know it's not written as a general for a 12 bar blues, all right, but this is a really nice way to finish it, to go back to the beginning. All right, and then it's a really nice little touch, all right? Let's do it with the backing track this time. On to D7. Back to A7. E. you hear, by just doing that little, it finishes the phrase off and helps us turn around to go back to the beginning, all right? So that's a turnaround, and you tend to have those at the end of the section of the phrase or the chorus, whatever you're playing. So the turnarounds are the big ones at the end of a section, all right? But you can also do something else to make it more interesting, which are climb-ups or walk-ups or passing notes or leading notes, okay? And they are going to take you into the next chord. So if we look, we've got A7, A7, A7 and A7. And that last A7 bar, instead of playing the pattern, I'm actually going. So what I'm doing is I'm climbing my way. That helps in two ways. First of all, it makes it sound more interesting. You're not playing the same thing over and over again, but also it helps the other musicians know when they've got to change chord. It really is as simple as that. So without a backing track for a minute, let me just talk you through some of the places where I'm adding these extra things. And it really is up to you what you add, all right? The main thing you've got to remember is your destination. What is the note you are aiming for? That is the important one, all right? Not the notes to get you to it, but the actual note you're landing on. So in other words, it's the destination is the important bit, not the journey. Let's see if I can show you where I'm putting them in. So from the beginning, here's the first one. So at that point, I went leading me into our D. But remember, the D is the important bit. Little sneaky one, if you're up for it, okay? Okay, see what I mean though? You can really add your own touch, right? Carrying on. Another sneaky one. So rather than me playing what was written originally, which was A, G, E, that means I'm sort of landing on the E too early, but by putting in those tiny little climb ups there, now I could just play it, but again I'm landing on that A, so I could go which is our big turnaround. So just 1, 2, 3. I think I've managed to fit in 3 climb ups and a turnaround in that 12 bars. And you don't have to do the same every time you play it. In fact, the more things you change with it, but don't go too mad, all right, the more interesting it can sound. But remember, it's where you're landing on is the important bit. So I'm going to try it now, putting in various climb-ups, walk-ups, turnarounds, but I'm not going to say anything. See if you can spot them all. So that was playing it with a swing tempo, okay? And it works exactly the same with a straight tempo as well. And these are just giving you ideas here. I've written them down for you. And remember now, all the PDFs, the backing tracks and things will be available on my Patreon site, okay? But these are there just to give an idea. As I was playing it then, I was playing different things that I've played before, different things that are written down, because you just have to sort of feel your way with it. I know that sounds odd, but honestly, the more you do it, get used to playing the basic patterns, then you become quite happy adding the extra bits which really make it nice. So same thing, but with a straight tempo. Again, I was playing through that then, and you will eventually find it's quite difficult just to play the same thing over and over again, because you know what is going to sound good in there. And that is one of the massive things about the blues. It's how you're feeling at the time, okay? But don't be frightened once you've learnt your patterns doing it to really give it your own little bit of spice when you're playing. So again, I will put these backing tracks at the end of this video now, both the straight and the swing versions of it. Okay, so you can mess about, play it, and remember, once you get that basic pattern and once you know where your notes are going to, you can really add anything you like. But the main things you are doing is keeping the rhythm and making sure that the next chord that everybody moves to, including yourself, is the correct one. So that's my little series of lessons for beginners for the 12-bar blues, and I mean absolutely start from scratch, but hopefully getting you to a level where you could go along and sort of, you know, be quite proud of the way you're jamming the blues. PDFs and backing tracks will be available on my Patreon site, and if you'd like to support me on the Patreon site, I will pop a link in the description below. As always, though, if you've got any comments or questions, please feel free, leave them below. Give us a like if you've enjoyed, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on new videos. Thank you for watching.